Our problem now for the farmers is some workers don't want to pay the legal way, by the legal way, and they prepare to take black money.
The workers?
The workers.
Why?
I don't know, to don't have less for the social security, because the wage is 40 euros per day, minus 10%, because I pay 40 as a farmer, but the bank keeps 10% for the social security. To avoid 10% less, no, I want black money.
In the orchards of ETHEAS and the greenhouses of Messenia, Greek agriculture is alive, but who is keeping it that way? Over 90% of the hands harvesting Greece's fruits and vegetables today belong to foreign workers. Yet many of these laborers remain invisible, not just in public discourse, but also in the policies that shape their lives and working conditions. In this interview, we are turning our attention away from Europe's borders and cities to the heart of its countryside, where immigration is a deadly reality, shaping food systems, rural economies, and societies. My guest today is Christos Giannakakis, Vice President of the new Hellenic Confederation of Agricultural Cooperatives, ETHEAS. A leading voice in Greek agriculture governance, Mr. Giannakakis has spent decades working closely with producers, policymakers, and communities. Together, we will explore some pressing questions. Can Greek agriculture function without migrant workers? Why do so many farms rely on undocumented labor? What makes it so difficult to hire foreign workers legally? And how does immigration affect rural communities? This interview offers an on-the-ground perspective on how immigrant labor sustains and affects the agricultural economy and rural society. So, Mr. Giannakakis, thank you very much for receiving me here in your office. How did you first encounter the topic of migrant labor in Greek agriculture?
The Greek agricultural economy has depended on foreign labor for the past 30 years. Until about 3 years ago, the majority of agricultural labor needs were met by Albanian workers. These individuals either lived permanently in Greece or entered temporarily, often with tourist visas, to work during specific cultivation and harvest periods. Once their work was done, they would return to Albania. However, after the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of available Albanian workers sharply declined. This shortage has created significant problems for Greek agricultural production, both in planting and in harvesting. Compounding the issue is the rise in daily wages. 4 years ago, the average was around 25 to 26 euros per day. Today, it's between 40 and 60 euros. These labor costs are becoming unsustainable, and even at these rates, it's difficult to find workers. As a result, farmers' income is strained, and many cannot afford to cultivate their land properly. Additionally, the cost of transporting products to markets has increased, which further burdens consumers. Beyond the Albanian workforce, a significant portion of our labor needs used to be filled by migrants who had entered Greece illegally and were staying in reception centers, both on the islands and the mainland. Now their numbers have also dropped considerably. Heightened police enforcement has made farmers reluctant to employ undocumented workers. Consequently, we are turning to legal avenues to bring in labor from third countries. This approach allows us to both justify the expense in our financial records and ensure the proper management of our farms.
So you were always facing a situation in which Greek farms needed immigrant workers, because you are saying that since 30 years already, that is in the early 1990s, it has been a prevailing practice for Greek farmers to rely on immigrant workers.
Yes, foreign labor has been essential for decades. Initially, before 1985, agricultural labor was provided through internal migration. People from poorer regions of Greece, such as the mountainous villages of Western Macedonia, or remote areas of Thrace with Muslim populations, would move to more prosperous agricultural zones to work. Toward the late 1980s, Polish workers began arriving when the Polish government lifted restrictions on international travel. That helped cover some of our labor shortages. Later, after political changes swept through Eastern Europe, particularly in Albania, many Albanians began migrating, often illegally, to Greece, significantly contributing to our labor force. Regions cultivating fruits and vegetables have always required additional hands. Initially, these came from within Greece, then from neighboring Balkan countries, and eventually from more distant nations.
How would you describe the current labor needs of Greek agricultural cooperatives? To what extent today are Greek farms dependent on foreign labor, be it permanent labor or seasonal labor?
Permanent workers are mainly employed in livestock farming, greenhouses, and small tree nurseries. For other types of crops, such as fruits, olives, and citrus, we rely primarily on seasonal workers. In these types of cultivation, the legal limit for hiring seasonal farm workers is 9 months. Those who are employed as seasonal workers are paid using what's known as the ergosimo. The ergosimo is the minimum daily wage established by the National Collective Agreement. From this amount, 10% is withheld for the insurance organization, which provides health coverage. In contrast, permanent workers are typically employed in facilities like factories, sorting centers, and packing houses. These workers can stay for up to 1 year and are compensated with a social security stamp, rather than the ergosimo. So in primary agriculture, we mainly see seasonal workers in the fields, greenhouses, and nurseries, while permanent workers are found in processing and packing facilities.
Okay, and so these are the legal conditions, but to what extent do Greek farms really need them? Are they crucial for the harvests, for the running of cooperatives and farms, or are they more or less a marginal workforce? Are they really crucial?
Based on our estimates, the primary agricultural sector in Greece requires approximately 60,000 to 70,000 seasonal workers. We try to bring in as many as we can through legal channels. Let me give you an example. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, borders were closed and international movement was restricted. In response, cooperatives, including mine, worked to obtain a special permit. I personally contacted the Albanian government, and an agreement was made between Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the Greek Prime Minister, and Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of Albania. As a result, borders were opened for agricultural workers. These workers arrived in closed buses, wearing masks and gloves. For the first time, 32,000 of them were officially recorded. Most were needed in central Macedonia, with fewer required in southern Greece. However, in southern Greece, there was also a large number of undocumented workers, mostly from Bangladesh, but also from countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. We estimate that approximately 15,000 undocumented workers were in the western Peloponnese region, where strawberries are grown. Another 10,000 were in Crete, particularly in the greenhouses. This brings us to about 25,000 undocumented workers and 30,000 legally registered Albanian workers, a total of 55,000. That aligns with our estimate of needing 60,000 to 70,000 seasonal workers. This need was validated by a preliminary survey conducted in 2020.
Right, so I understand that foreign workers are crucial in Greek agriculture because even at the time of COVID, there had to be an emergency
for the fruits and the vegetables
mechanism
and olives also.
olive as well. So people from Albania, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And they are working for fruits, olive oils, the harvesting where you cannot find local workers. So in your experience, how prevalent is the employment of undocumented, irregular migrant workers in Greek farms? Do you think it's a widespread practice or it's marginal?
The need to legalize individuals who entered the country illegally was particularly urgent in the Peloponnese and Crete, where such labor was being utilized. There was a widespread but incorrect rumor that the number of undocumented workers in Greece was around 300,000. In reality, the number was closer to 30,000. These workers were vital for agricultural production and highly experienced. Not legalizing these 30,000 workers would have been a mistake. When the question of whether to proceed with legalization arose, we, representing the National Union of Agricultural Cooperatives, took a clear stance. We sent a letter to all political parties urging them to pass the amendment in Parliament. In fact, the letter I personally signed was used by the government during the parliamentary debate to demonstrate that the initiative had the backing of cooperative organizations and farmers. This wasn't a government-driven decision for other political purposes. It was genuinely needed. The original deadline for worker legalization was set for October 31st, 2024. However, by that date, many needs remained unmet, and not all applications had been submitted or reviewed. Therefore, we requested that the Ministry of Migration amend the law and extend the deadline. Until this amendment was officially enacted, the Central Service of the Ministry in Athens issued a verbal directive to local offices to accept applications. These would later be validated retroactively from January 1st, 2025. This process was indeed followed. However, when the new Minister of Migration, Mr. Makis Voridis, assumed office, he initially announced that no further legalizations would take place. We intervened once again, explaining that it would be a mistake. With government encouragement, we had advised farmers to submit their applications with the understanding that the law would be amended retroactively. Mr. Mavroudis Voridis, October 2019. Mr. Voridis ultimately agreed that all applications submitted by the end of March 2025 would be legalized through a new law. He even sent us an official document confirming this commitment. Mr. Voridis' policy, while aiming to be strict, seeks to bring order to the system and ensure that all foreign workers in Greece are legal. We work closely with the ministry to help them understand the problems on the ground. The biggest challenge in bringing legal workers to Greece lies with the embassies and consulates abroad. These offices take an excessively long time to process applications. As a result, applications pile up, and the workers grow tired of waiting. Many eventually decide not to come to Greece, leaving our agricultural labor needs unmet. I'm aware that Minister Voridis has submitted a proposal to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The idea is that for countries with bilateral agreements with Greece, prospective workers should not be required to attend interviews at consulates. Instead, they would only need to complete the necessary documentation, provide criminal record checks, submit medical certificates proving they are free from infectious diseases, and comply with all Schengen and Greek Immigration Code requirements. This proposal is currently under consideration. We hope it will be accepted, as it would allow us to sign more bilateral agreements and eliminate the need for consular interviews, which are a major bottleneck. We are awaiting the outcome.
Okay, so I understand that you at ETHEAS, you play an intermediary role between the farmer, the cooperatives on the one end, and the government on the other end, trying to match the situation that is we have farmers that need workers in an emergency, and you try to accelerate the process from the side of the government so that these workers can have documents, but there are delays and so there happens to be some mismatch. My question is, do you think that it's mostly a matter of time? That is, what you suggest is that the farmers needed in an emergency the workers for the harvest, and I mean they needed them probably faster than the bureaucracy could process the paperwork. Do you think it's only a matter of time, or do you think there is also a question of pay? That is, once those people are regular workers, they may create higher costs for the farms in terms of taxes, social security contributions, and so on. So do you think farmers are ready to pay social security contributions, legal wages, and so on, and it's mostly a matter of time why they have irregular workers? Or do you think that some farmers have also difficulties in paying everything that needs to be paid for those workers, high wages, social security contributions, and so on? What are the main motivations for those farmers who are, for instance, you mentioned Peloponnese and Crete? What are the primary motivation when they are irregular workers? Time or money?
First, the main issue is where we source these workers from. When we look to countries like Vietnam, India, or Thailand, the distance is substantial, the travel time is significant, the journey is complex, and the cost is high. We have reliable information indicating that workers from those countries pay exorbitant fees, often between $6,000 and $9,000, to manpower agencies just to secure employment in Greece. This creates a major financial burden for the workers. Now consider that these workers can legally stay in Greece for up to 9 months. If they work 25 days a month, that's about 225 working days. At a daily wage of 40 euros, their total earnings would be 9,000 euros. If they've already spent 6,000 euros or more just to get here, they are left with only about 3,000 euros, assuming everything goes smoothly. That's simply not sustainable or appealing to them. We propose creating a system where workers can apply online, perhaps by paying a small application fee of 50 euros to ensure genuine interest. This system would allow Greek authorities to view their resume, passport, photo, age, and other essential information directly, cutting out expensive intermediary agencies entirely. The second issue lies with the Greek consular authorities. According to Greek law, once an application is submitted in Greece, a decision should be made within 10 days. Our embassies abroad are supposed to respond within 2 months. Until recently, applications were submitted in handwritten form, requiring employees to manually enter all the data, causing delays and even opportunities for corruption, such as paying to move a file up in the queue. Fortunately, the system has recently become electronic. Now applications are logged online and queued automatically, making it fairer and more efficient. However, embassies still don't adhere to the 2-month deadline. They cite a lack of staff as the reason. Each candidate interview can take 30 to 45 minutes, which significantly slows down the process. Regarding wages, we are not avoiding legal obligations. We pay beyond what's required, often 50 euros or 60 euros per day, when the legal daily wage is around 38 to 39 euros. Our problem isn't cost, it's the lack of available workers. In Central Macedonia, we typically need workers for just 4 months. Workers from distant countries are unlikely to come for such a short time. That's why we must also find employment opportunities for them in other parts of Greece to make the trip worthwhile. Egypt, on the other hand, is a highly viable solution. It's just a 90-minute flight away, and a ticket costs only 130 euros. 2 years ago, Greece signed a bilateral agreement with Egypt, where the Egyptian Ministry of Employment would find and recommend workers, again, with no middlemen involved. But the problem was implementation. The Egyptian ministry submitted a list of workers to the Greek system without essential details. no passport numbers, resumes, or photos. As a result, it was impossible to assess or contact the candidates. Although the agreement provided for 5,000 workers, only about 150, 170 came. When Minister Varetis asked me why we weren't using the agreement, I explained that we simply couldn't reach or evaluate the candidates. To resolve this, ETHEAS was appointed by the Greek government to implement the Greek-Egyptian agreement. We hired a Greek employee fluent in Arabic, and I arranged a visit to Cairo to discuss practical implementation. Our proposal is to conduct interviews via WhatsApp. This allows us to see the worker, hear them, and evaluate their qualifications before making recommendations to farmers. If Minister Varetis' current proposal to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Giannakakis, is accepted, it will exempt these workers from embassy interviews. This would dramatically shorten the timeline, bringing it down to just 1 to 1.5 months for a worker to arrive and begin work. Also, consider that the daily wage in Egypt is around 5 euros. In Greece, it's 40 euros. So even working just 4 to 5 months in Greece can provide Egyptian workers with a very substantial income, especially when they don't have to pay large fees to manpower agencies or spend much on travel. So yes, this approach offers a realistic, effective solution for both Greek farmers and foreign workers.
So you mentioned bureaucratic delays, which I understand make things very complex for cooperatives. But I keep coming back to the questions. Do you think, because I have heard, for instance, about this agreement between Egypt and Greece, and I have heard that there was this platform to exchange job offers and job requests, but many farmers preferred not to use the platform, so perhaps for practical reasons. But I am still wondering, you know, you mentioned that the average wage in Egypt is 5 euros per day, 40 euros. Is 40 euros the minimum wage in Greece?
It's 38 point something.
It's the minimum wage.
Yeah.
So I understand that even if the farmers were not paying the minimum wage, or if they were not paying on the top of the minimum wage the social security, FK, the Egyptian workers will still be happy with the working conditions. So do you think that, and I talk very informally, just about your feeling about the situation, do you think that some farms are trying to take advantage of the situation and say, okay, these workers, they earn 5 euros in Egypt, I can give them this amount? And
only me, I know that the wage in euro is 5 euros, nobody else. In any case,
when there's a surplus of available labor, some employers may not pay the minimum wage. But when there is a severe labor shortage, the situation changes. Workers can pressure or even force employers to pay significantly more. And today, farmers are generally paying more than the minimum wage. Except for a few isolated cases, most workers receive wages that are well above the legal minimum.
And so when there is the supply of labor, yes, some farms may say, okay, I will pay a bit less. These are undocumented workers, no papers.
If you pay less, the worker will go to another farmer.
Oh, you think this is the state of the market now? They cannot really pay less than the minimum wage?
Yes. This is really right.
And the social security contributions, do workers really care about them?
Our problem now for the farmers is some workers don't want to pay the legal way, by the legal way, and they prefer to take black money.
The workers?
The workers.
Why?
I don't know, to don't have less for the social security, because the wage is 40 euros per day, minus 10%, because I pay 40 as a farmer, but the bank keeps 10% for the social security. To avoid 10% less, no, I want black money. Black money for me is problem because I cannot write in my books, in accountant, to decrease my income. We need the legal way.
Okay, and so you think the farms could survive with higher wages? I mean, by doing it by the book, that is paying the minimum wage, paying the social security contribution, or do you think there are farms that are constrained and saying, okay, if I pay everything, the farm will close down? Do you think there is this risk for some farmers that if they were to pay not black market as well, it will be too expensive for them and the farm will not work?
The last 3 years, many farmers leave the professional of your year, agriculture, because the income is very low. They leave the agricultural sector.
So there is many farms have troubles as well.
Yes, yes.
I see. Okay, and so okay, that's quite interesting. So your role at ETHEAS, what have you tried to do to help farmers meet their labor needs at a cost that is sustainable for them? What are your projects on this front?
Yes.
We believe Greek agriculture must move more decisively toward mechanization. For example, 30 years ago, cotton was harvested by hand. If that were still the case today, cotton cultivation would have ceased. There simply aren't enough workers, and the cost is prohibitively high. Mechanization enabled farming to continue. The same principle applies to other sectors, such as fruit farming. On my own land, I use a linear cultivation system, palmette, along with mechanical ladders and anti-hail nets. This reduces the number of workers needed and significantly increases labor productivity. A worker using mechanical systems can be over 50% more productive, and crop yields are higher as well. As an organization, our message to farmers is clear. Evolve your cultivation methods. Abandon traditional approaches. Adopt linear cultivation. Install drip irrigation. And use fertigation techniques to deliver nutrients efficiently, reducing both chemical usage and environmental impact. This transition allows for fewer workers, less chemical input, and higher productivity.
And can farm easily access, because these machines have a cost, can farms easily access credit to invest in these better machines?
Yes, we have European funding programs in place. Initially, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, RF, covered up to 80% of the cost for crop restructuring. This includes planting new crops in linear formations and purchasing machinery. Now, the Ministry of Rural Development offers programs through the European Union's Rural Development Policy, which subsidizes 50% to 60% of machinery purchases. So both national and European funds are available. If farmers choose to utilize them, they can make the necessary investments. I have personally made use of these programs myself.
And one last question. So how do you see the presence of immigrant workers in rural communities? That is, how do they live there? Do they live separately? Do they live in the farm? How do you feel that this immigrant workforce integrate in the rural society? Or are there extremely mobile people that just are coming and going? How do they, from the more social point of view, how do they live in the countryside?
Until now, most farmers have provided basic accommodations for their workers free of charge: sleeping quarters, kitchens, toilets, and bathing facilities. However, we are now advocating for the establishment of proper settlements using prefabricated housing, containers with appropriate amenities. These would include bathrooms, kitchens, air conditioning, and overall humane living conditions. ETHEAS has formally requested that the Ministry of Rural Development include such housing in their subsidy programs. An 18-square-meter container can house up to 4 people and costs about €6,000. With a 50% subsidy, that becomes €3,000, an affordable investment for long-term infrastructure. We are encouraging cooperatives to purchase these containers collectively to support their member farmers.
So these are the housing conditions of workers. And in terms of social life, do they have a distinct presence in villages, in communities, or because I understand those containers would create also a concentration of immigrant workers, perhaps in some areas. Do you, or perhaps it's not a problem, the presence of immigrant workers, because they must be somehow different. You mentioned immigrants from Bangladesh or Vietnam. They must be quite different from the rest of the local population, no?
There have been occasional issues with worker concentrations, but we believe that if each farmer houses only the workers they need, potential problems will be minimized. We don't deny that tensions may arise, but dispersing workers across farms rather than centralizing them helps. In general, our approach is proactive. We monitor the situation closely and encourage integration wherever possible.
Okay, so Mr. Giannakakis, it was very interesting. It was a broad overview of the immigrant workforce in the Greek agriculture, how they are needed, how they are hired, how they are paid, what are the alternatives, and how they live there. So thank you very much for sharing these insights with us.
Thank you as well. I'm happy to answer any other questions if needed.
If you would like to say something more on the topic, do not hesitate to conclude, to have the last word.
I belong to the group of people who believe that every worker, regardless of their country of origin or religious beliefs, is a fellow human being. They deserve our hospitality, respect, and protection. There were times when Greeks, facing poverty and persecution, emigrated to seek work. Just as we hope to be welcomed abroad, we must now extend the same courtesy to those who come here. When I witness inappropriate behavior toward workers, I intervene immediately, both by confronting the offenders and by notifying the authorities. Because, above all, we are human beings.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.